Onto the qualifying session. So Portimao is well and truly here. And as you can see on the screen, sadly, it doesn't look like Wiggles is there at the moment. However, I think he is facing some problems with connectivity. So he may very well start from the back. Just message Discord just to see if that's the case. We'll just check that for you. Very interesting indeed. I don't know, who called it in the chat that there could be potential rain? Oh yeah, I think it was you, Ozzy, wasn't it? Look at that. Rain at the end of the race. Plenty of carnage going ahead. It's interesting. We also got the Darkling making his debut for Ferrari. So we love to see a good debutant within this Grand Prix. Now, interestingly enough, it's only 15 people. So we're not going to have anyone going out of this qualifying session. Should I imagine? Just in case he makes a mistake or whatnot, which is very easy to do around this track. He's not going to go for a first run as of yet, because as you can see, he's not deploying any energy. So let's have a look and see what Asmafrog is doing. And yeah, he's deploying energy. And this is one of those tracks where it's I think you run out just before you actually come across the line. As you can see on Asmafrog's energy, it'll be below 70 by the time he brakes. Yeah, just see just below there. Just dipped into 69. There's a little bit of a twitch as he exited the first corner down to turn 3, which you've got to be very careful. So easy to lock a front wheel into the upward turn 4. It's so easy to lose the car there. Red Bull going slowly in sector 3, so I imagine he's trying to stay out of everybody's way. And now into the tight right left-hander into the hairpin. Just about keeps the car on the track. And Asmafrog now comes into the tight second sector. Now, this is one of those corners, as I said, and he invalidates, as you can see there. And just like that, it's so easy to invalidate. As you can see in front, Blue has also lost the car. Deflated Wee has left the session. So who else is going to be on a time run? So Blue was he out? So let's go on board with John in the McLaren and see how he does. Oh, beg your pardon, it wasn't Flue. It turned out it might have been Joseph Hales that have just made a mistake, so apologies for that. So Flue's obviously set at 1:21, so there's not going to be a representative time. We're expecting more, probably a few seconds off there, maybe in about 1:17 or so. But let's see what John's able to do in this McLaren. It's looking very tidy for him so far. As he comes across the final corner, he's only got about 30% of ERS left in this car. And he's going to run out potentially by the time he crosses the line. And what does the McLaren do for a benchmark? It's a 20 minutes flat, which for medium tyres isn't too bad, all things considered. One in the Mercedes comes through to start his first qualifying run, and I believe that is Mr. Wiggles. Deton is just taking his time. Greg has set a very good first sector in this McLaren, 22.9, which I think was on par with his teammate. As everyone just tries to get a little bit of a feel for how things are going to go in this car. See, Alfa Romeo almost loses the back end coming out. 54.5 for Greg as he comes across the second sector interval. Now down into the final sector, where you've got to be so patient. And that wasn't the exit that he needed. Really, he needed a bit more. He needed a bit more go than that. But as he comes across the line, what's Greg going to do for a benchmark? It's not going to be quite with his teammate. It's going to be a 20.5 though, with Smaller Smiley comes across the line to set the fastest time. Who's next over the line? I believe it's Flue. Actually, no, it's Joseph Hales, who's just like in one of the earlier rounds, they're going to try and get through to qualifying on the hard compound tyre. He's invalidated his first run, so he's going to be down on pace compared to... Oh, actually, no, I mean... Well, I just remembered, he's not actually going to get through. He's not actually going to go out, because there's only 15 people in the qualifying session. Wiggles does a 19.1 to set the early benchmark yet again. Asmafrog still yet to set a time as the McLaren comes into the pit. And who is that out on a Who's that about to come across the line? I believe it's... So the champion-elect could be crowned today. As Joseph Hales kind of gets away with going over the track limits there and validates somewhat. Interesting to see where he ends up, because we know he's very fast in qualifying, but we'll get a sense really of how far the car is off, and he's invalidated as he comes across the curb. So easy to do that across this corner. So I guess everyone can more or less use this qualifying session as, to be honest, a bit of a practice session, just to see where everyone could be at. The Mercedes comes across the line here. So I believe everyone now is just... They've had their first sort of run. So they're all going to be coming back into the pits just to see how much time they got left. And what else they could get out of this session. As Aspen Frog comes into the... pits, I imagine. John has retired only in 6th. So whatever happens, he'll get through. But clearly not wanting to take too much life out of his tyres. Now, we'll come on back with Deflated Wee. How you doing, Novatech? Great to see you. Now, Deflated Wee, in the beginning of the season, was certainly up there with one of the faster drivers on the grid. However, he has sort of waned a little bit. Hopefully he can get a decent race and decent qualifying under his belt. Hadj retires, having qualified in 3rd on set softs. Now, it's not actually locking up. Notice how you tag Snacks instead of me. So I think we both got something wrong there. As Deflated Wee doesn't look like he's got anything wrong so far. Asthma Frog retires from the session. So he hasn't quite got the balance that he needs. We'll see how he takes this corner. And looks like it's relatively straightforward. Into the long right-hander, which feels like it goes on for forever. Goes out of the track there, but it doesn't really... So you could argue he probably lost a little bit of time there as he comes round the final right-hander. This isn't going to be the fastest time we've ever seen. However, it's going to give him a bit of target practice just to see where he stands coming the rest of the session. It goes across the lane. It goes 3rd by that time, so very strong lap, I have to say, for Deflated. Who else is still out on a run? So we've got Top Gun. He does a 53.5 for a 2nd sector. He's looking very quick in his AlphaTauri. Reserve driver, I think this is only his 4th race so far, but he's already up there with one of the best. Blue retires from the session. A lot of people deciding that it's not worth the extra run just to make sure that they still have some life left in their tyres. And what does Top Gun do as he comes across the line? It's going to be a 19.2, so just a bit above from what Deflated Wee was able to do. It's looking pretty close between the top 4. And everybody else is currently in the pit lane, as Joseph Hales is still out on the hard tyres, clearly using this as a practice session at the moment. Which, to be fair, with no one going out at the moment, it's not much from an entertainment perspective, but you can't really blame him as far as the thinking about the race strategy is concerned. Imagine a last race decider for 82. I mean, Michael Massey intensifies. I believe the 50-meter board has been destroyed, so I think somebody will certainly pay a copper for that one. But with 6 minutes left in qualifying, as we're clearly watching Joseph Hales using this as a test run. Red Bull versus Mercedes all over again. And F1 Twitter would not see the light of day. It will just go full, like, apocalypse mode. I mean, Team LH will be full effect, who... I know, like, some fans are bad, but this is coming from a Hamilton fan. Team LH really are psychotic on Twitter, it has to be said. see Joseph Hale's clearly using this as a testing session. Wiggles is out on, I think it's another set of medium tyres. Okay, so another take. I've just seen those TikToks about Charles Leclerc, and yeah, they're certainly ripping into Red Bull, aren't they? So there we go. There's not much to report in this first round. However, that guy in Asperfrog didn't set a time, so obviously saving a little bit of pace for the next qualifying round. Darkling was a pretty decent benchmark. However, still plenty to play for. And I dare say there are worse stuff from the Leclerc fans on TikTok. But anyway, we're not focused about the Charles Leclerc and the Ferrari at the moment, because we're focused on John in the McLaren as he comes across the line to start his first qualifying lap of the Q2 session. DRS wide open, saving the ears until the last possible unit. Into turn 1, down to 5th. Turn 2, straight away. Then into turn 3. Got to get it slowed down to about 4th gear. Turn in early and try not to lock the wheels. And just straighten up the car for the uphill turn 4. And there we go into the next round of corners. Into the tight hairpin into turn 5. 22.5 for a first sector. Pretty good benchmark. Mr. Wiggles feeling that Johnny is a sweat at this game. Well, it clearly takes one to know as goes down into turn 6. Then down to 7 and 8. One after another. It kind of feels like the Agua Minerale at Imola. But keeps it in 5th gear just to make sure that he's got a decent amount of traction, just to make sure he gets the corner cells. And now down into the next set of right-hand corners. Again, one after another. Upshifts early into 5th. Upshifts into 6th for the next set of corners. Down to 4th. Now up comes the penultimate right-hand anymore. And Sun God obviously debunking my theory about Wiggles being a sweaty. But in any case, John comes across the final set of corners now, and let's see what the McLaren does at your benchmark. This is going to be the time that everybody will want to beat. Is he going to get into 1 minute 17s? No, he doesn't, but it's an 18.3, so I think that puts Darkling's lap into a little bit more context. Flu goes second with a 18.7. Deton comes across the line in his Red Bull, and what does he do for a time lap? It's a 19.5. Now, this is a better sort of showing that we've seen from him as of yet. Now, the next person to come across the line is going to be Prev in his Mercedes, taking a wide line into the final corner. And let's see how he does for a time. Let's see how he does compared to Deton, rather. 18.8, which is more or less on par with Flu. He takes the qualifying session in 3rd. Asma Frog, I think, is the next to come and set a time, and no, I don't think that's a competitive one. So next, I think, is Joseph Hales, who's on mediums. He does an 18.5 for that time on medium compound tires. That's good going. It has to be said, that's very good going on the medium tire. That guy is obviously invalidated, so he's going to go for another run. Waiting till quite late to turn on his ERS. I'm sure there's a bit of motive behind that. I imagine we'll see John into the pits. Yep, you see the McLaren coming in. Let's go on board with that guy and see how well he does, as his teammate is currently on his timed lap right now. Joe is faster than me on mediums, than me on softs. Yeah, I feel your pain as an 82 driver. You just wonder how on earth these people are that good. But that guy sets a brilliant first sector. It's a 22.2 in his Williams, down into the Agua Minerale. I think that's what I'm going to call it. I think one of these corners is actually called Portimao, as he loses the back end. And that's going to put a massive hamper on his time. 10.10 comes across the line and straight away into the 17s. A 1 minute 17.9. And that becomes the new benchmark for everybody to beat. Asper Frog invalidates yet again, so he's coming into the pits. Prev is not around, so I got him mixed up. So the other Mercedes, Wiggles, comes through. Let's go on board with him and see how well he does, because he's in a close fight with John for second in the championship. I think it's safe to say the World Championship is out of his reach, and he's invalidated off the exit of turn 1, and he's going to have to save his tyres for another run. So let's see Smaller Smiley then in the Alfa Romeo, which is certainly a good-looking car, and he's invalidated as well. It's so easy to do this in this game. Many invalidations are a piece. Joseph Hale's wondering that 18.5 isn't enough to get through. Well, it's hard to tell, bear in mind most people haven't set their times yet. Which very gingerly goes across that left-hander into the right-hander hairpin, left-hander hairpin, which is turn 5. Into turn 6 he goes, then into the joint 7 and 8. It looks like he's keeping that. He's keeping that Haas plan where he needs, so into turn 9, then the straight joints 10 and 11. Decent exit from the Haas into 12, then into 13 straight away. And then straight away into 14. The penultimate long left right-hander. And then straight away he goes into another long right-hander, which is the final corner, turn 15. As the Fleet Wheel comes across the line, what does he do for a benchmark time? It's an 18.2, so fairly strong, it has to be said. As Wiggles does the 22.2 for a first sector. Now this is looking quick for the Mercedes. Into Agua Minerale. Yep, that is what I'm officially calling it. .52.4 for a second sector time. As Mr. Wiggles comes across the final sector, what's he going to do for time? He would have lost the best for his tyre, so expect this to be in the 1 minute 18s. However, it's a 17.7. As I say that, Mr. Wiggles jumps into the provisional pole, setting the fastest time that we've seen so far in this session. Smaller Smiley does an 18.4. Who else is still out on the lap? We got Padge, who's done a 22.7 for a first sector. Not really feeling confident about tonight, losing the desire to race. Well, keep your chin up, it's Portimao, and plus racing, anything can happen, and you've been on pretty good form as of late, so don't write off the race before it's even started. 53.6 for Padge as he comes across the line. It's very hilly, this section, a lot of undulation, and yeah, like Portimao, it was a bit, it was sort of okay. It was kind of there in 2020 simply because we needed a race, thanks to the COVID pandemic. What does Padge do as he comes across the line? 19.1. Asperfrog does a 19.4, so we've just got the Darkling and Top Gun yet to set a time. As Top Gun comes out of the pits. And how much time have we got left? How many red flags will we be counting on average in next season's game? I don't know. To be fair, it is a bit of a chaotic tier, with certainly some new racers, but a lot slower than his initial best time. Oh, that must be a glitch. So go back on board with Top Gun. Let's go on board with Top Gun. And he's invalidated. Days Validate, but he's still going for a timed run. So maybe it's just one of those shows just to show us what he can do. Wiggles has retired from the session. He's like, okay, that's the best I can do. As 10-10 does a 17-3. The champion-elect taking no prisoners already. And just as I thought, it's going into the 17th. But a 17-3, that is crazy. John's retired from the session. 53-0 for Top Gun. So he'll be a little bit down, I think, on the sector. Good to see you, Steely. So it doesn't make any sense why he's coming and backed off. I mean, he's going to find it hard to get out in time. But if he outscores me, he wins the World Championship. Well, if he outscores you, he'll definitely be able. It all depends if John outscores him by 9 points, then the championship's still on. However, if he outscores the pair of you, the championship is effectively over. Darking goes into the first corner. This is his only chance to set a decent qualifying run, as he keeps it very steady as of yet. And let's see what he does for a first sector time. It's a 22-3, so that's looking very quick for the Ferrari as he keeps it within track limits and being very, very careful there, it has to be said. Into the next few turns, turn 7 and turn 8, so quickly, but he goes wide with that. He would have lost a little bit of time. He keeps his lap though, as the time is about to hit 0 in the session. So interesting, in the drop zone, we've got Greg, Asperfrog, Padge, Darking, and Top Gun. Top Gun didn't make it up the line in time, so he's going to start only in 15th place. So, interesting to see what happens with both Greg and Asperfrog. It looks like Greg has slowed down on the tracker, so he's not going to get any further. But Darking looks like he's certainly up on one of his, well, another time. This is the only time that he's doing. This should see him comfortably get through, as long as he doesn't do anything silly. And he only goes into 8th with that time. That guy comes across the line. Prev is in the pits. Now, it all just depends on what Deton is able to do, alongside Asperfrog, who has lost it. So he will be going out. Greg, unfortunately, is going to be going out as well. And Deton turning very early there, so not quite the line he would have wanted to take. And he's 6/10 down, so I don't think anyone's going to improve below the time. So that pretty much sets the bottom 15. So we have Padge sadly out, and then we'll have Deton out in 12th, with Greg in 13th, Asperfrog 14th, and Top Gun, who didn't get round to the start finish line in time, in 15th place. Now he's going to have a very busy charge, isn't he? So as to see everyone now starting to pull into the pits, which is true, and everybody who has sadly been eliminated. So 10-10 setting a very ominous time there, clearly doing a Legend of Zelda thing on his emblem with a 17-3. But dropping out of the session, we have Padge in the Alfa Romeo. We also have Deton in the Red Bull. We have Greg in the McLaren. Very close times between these two. Between those three, rather, it has to be said. And Asperfrog not too far behind himself. So the cut-off point was really, really low. So it looks very, very competitive in the lower midfield. And Top Gun, sadly, didn't get around to starting the lap in time. So he is going to be starting the race in 15th place. And with 5 seconds to go, we'll go into the next stage of qualifying, which is the final set of qualifying. The 10-man shootout for pole position. It's given he was fastest in Q2, and he's the first one to set a lap now. Oh, cheers again, Spark. It certainly was close, but what was that for commentator's curse or something? But yeah, it's always good to host these things. Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you, Padge. Always a pleasure to commentate on some of these streams. And speaking of commentary, we're going to go through the lap that everybody wants to see. The champion-elect coming through to start his next qualifying run. turning on the ERS very, very quickly, it has to be said. Into turn 1 he goes. Can he keep it on track? Yes, he does. Taking absolute liberties with the track limits. Did you see? Not so tired tonight. Well, I did have a gym session earlier in the morning, so I'll let you know at the end of the stream. And there he goes, 22.2 for a first sector time. 10.10 already laying down the marker on the rest of the field as he goes through the tight turn 5. You have to get it turned in early, but it's so easy to lock a wheel. So certainly a track for the trail breakers. Down into turn 8 he goes. Very tight entry and very careful, you have to say, on the accelerator there. Into the long turn 11, once again taking a very wide entry. It's a 52.2 for a second sector. This is looking like an absolutely electric lap for the Williams, who set a 17.3 as an early benchmark in the second qualifying session. However, the Williams is looking like he could go probably just as faster through the next set of corners. The last corner here, taking as much curb as he wanted to get away with, taking all the liberties he can get away with. Across the line he goes, and it's only a 17.5 for a first time, as Flew does an 18.3. John is next to come round the line, and he does a 18.1, so obviously had a bit of a moment there. Smaller Smiley starting his outlap. I think the next one to come round is, I think it might be Joseph Hales in his Alpine. Yes, it is, 52.3. That's only a tenth off what 10.10 was able to do. So let's see what kind of sector he has coming into the final stretch. He always does a 17.6, so he's a tenth behind the benchmark time. Deflated Wee goes third. Prev thinks about to start his run. Wiggles only goes fourth with that time with an 18.1. Mistakes starting to creep in for everybody here. So far we only got Prev, Smaller Smiley, and that guy who yet to have a registered time. Darking is still in the pits. To go on board with the Alpha, he does a 52.9, so 7 tenths off the best. So they should see him around Flew in terms of lap time. So hopefully he's got a good run here. Yellow's in sector 2. He's come to cross the final corner. What is the Alfa Romeo going to do for a time? Across the line he goes. And he's just ahead of Flew. It's about 8 tenths off the pace though. Oh, there's a 22.2 for that guy. That's a very quick first sector for the Williams. Evening Snacks, how are you doing? Upshifts very, very early. Oh, but he loses the back end. It's so easy to do that around this track. 53.2, so he's a second down from the lead. So he only does an 18.8. So tired, so kind of like me. Johnny B obviously waving. As that guy is obviously losing out, he's obviously lost out a few tenths. So it's a shame because that first sector that he did was brilliant. Sun God could be spinning a lot on Sunday. Well, we don't call you the spin god for nothing. That guy goes third, but it could have been so much faster. It could have been provisional pole. And Steely had to do it, didn't he? First round over. First round runs over for this session. Does Johnny have one? No, but I think you guys can make one up for him. I think it might be quite fun. So let's see what Flew does. He's consistently in the top 10. And Alpine have got a very close fight, I think, with Haas for fourth in the constructors' stand. But you know, they're clear in fourth, so they should have that covered. As everybody starts to come out now for a time run. Darking is also out for an outlap. Flew taking things very, very steady. The Mercedes needs to get out of the way here. And thankfully he does. His 400's down off his best, is Flew. So he's got to have a good second sector. You think he'd be able to find a bit more time with a new set of tyres and the track having rubbered in a little bit more. It downs to third, crucially. And that's going to compromise his exit speed somewhat. Because engine braking will get the speed right down to a point where it'll be quite hard to handle. But his line in the early of the corner was probably a little too aggressive. And he's a 10th down on his best. So it doesn't look like this is going to be the best finest lap in the world for Flew. And I imagine he'll want to abandon this lap and come in and put on a new set of softs. Just to make sure he's got another fighting chance. Because he's not going to get anywhere with this time. So let's see what he does. And yeah, just as I suspect, he's coming in. And Prev, crucially, is not going to set a timed run here, but it looks like the next lap will be his chance. Crucially, the World Championship leader and champion-elect is coming up for his second run. And already getting the IIRs activated, he wants every last bit of top speed before going into the first corner. But the problem is, that's going to cost him near the end of the lap because, imagine, he'll probably be within the mid-60s by the time he gets into turn 1. But when he gets to turn 1, yeah, he's about 67%. But he judged that so well. The amount of speed they go, it wasn't in any danger of invalidating there. But hopefully he comes across the next corner with very tidy. Upshifts into fifth, so it helps him manage a build and wheel spin. He gets to 22.1 for a first sector, so he's already up on his best. Hopefully the next few sectors can be a little bit more faster for him, because obviously with that 1 minute 17.3 as a reference for what he did in Q2, really you want to shave a couple of tenths off that in Q3 based on how much the track has rubbered in. And he's looking very tidy so far in the Williams. Into turn 9 he goes, then straight away it's almost like 2 corners in one, turns 10 and 11, down into the next sector. He's up on his best by another 10, so it's a 52.1 for his second sector for 10.10. He comes across the line, and it looks like he's going to certainly improve the time. Set the goalpost for pole position just a little bit further. As he comes across the final corner now, he's running out of IIRs though, so that could hamper his exit speed somewhat. As he comes across the line, and it is a 32. It is a 1 minute 17.3 yet again. Joseph Hales is the 10th up on his best as he comes across the last sequence of corners now. He's got more IIRs than what 10.10 had, so his exit of the Colossal bit here should be that little bit extra better, and he just misses out, as I say that, by a few hundreds. That was a very good lap there from Joseph Hales, as Darking does a 17.9 for his time. Let's see what Wiggles been able to do, and Wiggles has lost it! Wiggles, who was in second place in the championship, is going to start from no higher than about 6th. That is a massive shame for Mr. Wiggles, and he comes into the pits. So that's it. That's the end of the Mercedes qualifying. What's John able to do in the McLaren? He needs a good qualifying here to take a little bit away from Mr. Wiggles, and he goes third with that time. Strong lap. Who else is still out? Deflated Wee didn't get over the line in time, so he's going to start in 6th, highest potentially. Smaller Smiley goes 5th with his time. Darking is going to be in 6th. Mr. Wiggles is going to drop down to 8th, and sadly Flew has invalidated. He's not going to go any higher. What's Prev able to do in his Mercedes? As that guy I think is still on a time, so let's go on board with him. He's invalidated. Yeah, so I think Prev is just the last one there. So, bit of a shocker there from Mr. Wiggles. He comes across in 8th place. It could potentially be 9th, depending on how well Prev does on his lap. Now, he's down, so I don't think he's going to improve. So, 8th and 10th for both of the Mercedes. It's not looking good for him. So crucially with Wiggles, he was 7/10 off, so he could have been at least for a front row start. We all bottled hard. I would say you, Bold, you were so close to getting pole position. However, coming across the line is Prev, who spins for good measure. Blue comes into the pits. And here we have our top 10 are nowhere near their best. That's pretty ominous. However, the grid is the grid. And with that, the champion-elect takes a very commanding pole position. All he has to do is finish ahead of John and Wiggles, and he will be the world champion. So there we have it, folks. For race 200, here are the top 10. So we have 10-10, who just takes pole position for Joseph Hales. John goes in third for McLaren, followed by that guy in the second Williams. Small Smiley, impressive lap to get into fifth, ahead of Darking by 0.003 of a second. Very, very close. Deflated Wee goes into seventh, with Mr. Wiggles sadly ruining this lap down in eighth. Blue goes into ninth for the second Alpine, and Preb lines up the top 10 in 10th place. So I have to say, guys, just before we go into the race, I'll be putting up a poll here. We're just seeing what you guys think. As you can see just on the screen, we have highlights of our last round of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which was a nail-biter to the finish. And as you can see, all of our videos are uploaded onto our YouTube channel after the highlights have been pulled together by Padge. So should you guys fancy to check out the highlights after we've finished our races, then by all means do hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel. We would love to have you guys as part of the IRL community. And just as close as we come up to hopefully 1,000 followers, ideally by the end of next season, we're close, very, very close to 650 at the moment. So make sure the followers keep coming in. And with that, guys, make sure you get subscribed to our YouTube channel as well. And make sure you check out our channel in case of any kind of content that you want to see in the future. We'll just do a quick reminder of the standings as well. As you can see on the screen with the top three, that's the thing that we're really looking for at the moment. The gap between 10-10 and Wiggles is 49 points. Wiggles needs to outscore 10-10 to still be in with a chance for the championship. John needs to outscore 10-10 by at least 9 points for him to stay in the hunt. And he needs, ideally, to get ahead of Wiggles for second in the championship. But given Wiggles is qualifying, it's certainly a possibility. And in terms of the constructor standings, Mercedes need to outscore Williams by 16 points to keep the championship alive. But Williams pretty much have one hand on the championship as it stands, which I have to say, brilliant teamwork from the pair of them just to make sure we can that they can win the championship. So there we have it, guys. Those are the championship standings. So we'll just quietly wait for the session to get underway. Quite a lot of you right now thinking that 10-10 is going to become the world champion. All he's cut in front of him is 5 red lights. And the Portuguese Grand Prix is underway. Looks like a fairly tidy start. I think Joseph Hales had the better start than anybody here. He's going to have the line down to the inside, and the Alpine takes the lead. 10-10, he has to yield, but it looks like John and a lot of the people are starting on the softs now. So that's crucial for the championship leader. He has lost position. A lot of people are starting on mediums, softs as well. John especially surprising to start on the softs. What's 10-10 going to do? He's about 10th behind. Is he going to throw it down to the inside of turn 5? Yes, he is. And just like that, he retakes the lead and he loses the back end somewhat. So he's going to drop back to potentially third. Yes, he is. He's dropped back to third with Smaller Smiley. It was all the way up into second. Brilliant start from the Alfa Romeo, who's just always been there or thereabouts with the leaders. So Joseph Hale leads with Smaller Smiley second. 1010 is third. And John not getting the start he wants down in fourth. Deflated Wee's moved up to sixth. And crucially as well, that guy is dropped down to sixth. Wiggles made up a place in seventh with Dark King in eighth. Ninth is Prev with Flu dropping all the way down to 10th. Deton is up into 11th place, I have to say. Brilliant start from Deton, who has... I have to turn the telemetry off. Apologies for that. And just like that, we're coming around the start for the end of lap 1 of the 33-lap race. And this is going to be certainly a race of attrition with the leaders all starting on the medium compound tyres. Smaller Smiley going into second with 1010 obviously dropping down to third. Deflated Wee has overtaken John for fourth place, it seems. Looks like the McLaren is not getting the grip he needs, supposed to be even by starting on the soft tyre. Could he potentially be going to a two-stop here as Wiggles versus that guy in the Williams? Mercedes has certainly got a lot of ground to make up himself, but however, he's only 2 places behind his championship rival, as it were, as Greg makes the mistake and goes off the track, so he drops all the way to the back. Top Gun starting on the hards, same as Flu and Prev, so expect people starting on the hards to potentially come in at about lap 20 or so. So those who start, I think John has got to be committed to a two-stop strategy here, because if it's like his strategy in Saudi Arabia in reverse, he's not going to end up in a competitive position. It has to be said, as everyone's sort of concertinaing at the moment. A Smaller Smiley gets his rear end absolutely out of shape there, and that's going to give 1010 a huge run coming into turn 1 almost. I don't think he'll even need DRS to potentially overtake the track, to overtake the Alfa Romeo. Joseph Hale sets the fastest lap with Deflated Wee setting the fastest lap behind him. The Williams goes round to the outside. Is he going to be able to make the move stick? Smaller Smiley covers the inside, and unfortunately the championship leader has to back off, with Deflated Wee not too far behind him as well. Loses the back end a little bit, but John looking to go around the outside of Deflated Wee there. There's plenty of action going on within this race, and it's certainly a joy to behold indeed, as the Ferrari of Darking goes off. What has happened to Darking? It looks like he's just driven off the track. And drops all the way down to the back, so not quite a brilliant debut there from the Ferrari. Wiggles versus that guy. The Mercedes is ahead. Joseph Hale's already putting some distance between himself and Smaller Smiley. Now, it's not the end of the world for the World Championship leader. Saw a snap of oversteer, potentially. So, obviously, in trying to correct it, he's obviously gone and shot him off. So, Smaller Smiley under pressure from 1010, Deflated Wee and everybody else behind, because crucially, he's out of DRS range of Joseph Hale. So, he's going to find that very, very hard to defend unless he has a brilliant exit coming out, which I don't think he has got. Now, as we know, if this track is anything to go by, it's very hard to recharge energy. Joseph Hale does the fastest lap yet again. All normal Ferrari things, trust in the master plan. Deflated Wee sits behind the Williams, who's not going to attempt to move right now. Now, this is lap 4 of 33, and crucially, as things stand, 1010 would become the world champion. Let Joseph cook indeed. L plan and all that lovely stuff. I think that's what they said when Alonso was at Alpine. But now, crucially for Smaller Smiley, he's now back within DRS range of the Alpine. So he's going to have a means now to defend against 1010, who has got Deflated Wee for close company behind him in 4th place. John, not getting the start he wanted at all, is sitting behind this pack in 5th on the soft compound tyres, who are going to go off so quickly. We've got a nice battle back between Flu and Deton. Flu on the hards, Deton on the mediums, going so close between the two. And the Red Bull, unfortunately, has to back out of there, as Greg sees down the inside. The Alpine still ahead of the Red Bull. These two giving us a lovely battle as they come through the turn 9 and into turn 10 and 11. So the leaders are coming through the final sector now, and crucially, John is looking very, very close to the back of the Haas of Deflated Wee. Did I mix them up with TD? I make so many of these blunders. I think we should have like a compilation of all of my blunders on the stream. So what do you guys think? As Smaller Smiley now back out of DRS range. Joseph Hale's doing everything he needs to. And crucially, he already burned his set of hard compound tyres. So I don't know whether he's got another set. I don't know whether that's possible. As Deflated Wee goes down to the inside of 1010. The Haas driver making a bid for third place, but he hasn't quite got the drive. He's going to be on the outside come the right-handers, and it looks like the Williams will have this covered, and yeah, he has to back out. And that puts John back into range, and he almost goes into the back of the Haas. Wiggles not too far behind the McLaren as well. John's got to be careful here, because he's got to make hay while the sun shines. However, he's running out of tyre life so quickly. This is on 4 sets of fuel. He's got a little bit more drive than Deflated Wee coming out of that corner. Is he going to chuck it down to the inside here? Yes, he is. The McLaren goes down the inside and into... No, he hasn't been able to take the place. And this puts him on the back foot with Wiggles, crucially, not too far behind as well. John racing him side by side through the final corner. He's going to have to exercise just a little bit of caution, and crucially for Deflated Wee, no, for Mr. Wiggles rather, that's going to give him a massive slingshot coming in down the pit straight. John has now dropped from 3rd to 6th in the space of 6 laps. And for a guy starting the soft combat time, he's coming down the inside. No, he's not. John has not had a great start. For a guy who started on the soft tire, you think would have a little bit more grip. However, he's just, I don't know whether he's just unable to do anything with it at the moment. However, he might have to go into an alternate strategy here. It could be an alternate strategy in place for the McLaren. So Top Gun now makes the move ahead of Prev, and these two giving us a hell of a show. The Alfa Tauri has already recovered into 9th place, but he's not going to make that move stick against the Mercedes. He's still trying his damnedest, though. But he gets it, no, but he loses the back end somewhat. There would have been a nice sort of switchback overtake. Wiggles turned the AI down right there. Absolutely, absolutely indeed. Joseph Hale's not quite getting away from Smaller Smiley. And this is just showing how competitive this is turning out to be, this race. And crucially, Smaller Smiley will not have DRS. Deton gets the first time penalty of the race, so only lap 6. I was wondering when that was going to come. And crucially for Smaller Smiley, he's going to be passed here by 1010, who lost pole position on the start, but now he's going to be well within range potentially to catch up to the back of Joseph Hales. He should be able to get DRS just as long as he has a brilliant next set of corners, but he's locked up. He goes wide, and that's going to allow the Alfa Romeo back through potentially. No, he's not. Deflated Wee goes into 4th, but crucially he's got the Mercedes right behind him. Mr. Wiggles going to chuck it down to the inside. Yes, he is. And Smaller Smiley's lost. He's lost 2nd place. It goes in way too deep. Deflated Wee rather staying right in front of Mr. Wiggles. This is brilliant racing, it has to be said, as John is going to have to sit back and hopefully he can pick up a few places, because I imagine his tyres are slowly starting to go off. John's soft to hard, so I think I'll find that quite hard to work. It's certainly possible, but if Saudi Arabia was anything to go by, it's very hard to make that strategy work, because your tyres will be dead by the end. And because the tyres wear out a lot less on the hards, he's going to have to feel pain for 67% wear for longer, so it's not the best place to be. So, but crucially, those softs are not where he wants them to be at all. With 7 laps behind, with 7 laps gone, he should have really gained some places, but instead he's fallen down to 6th. But he's not too far behind Mr. Wiggles now. As you can see on the steering wheel, he's deploying whatever bit of energy he can. Mr. Wiggles is still struggling. He's not making anything on that Mercedes. But he's looking very, very close here. Is he going to potentially throw it down the inside? No, he's not. They just have to wait and buy their time. You can tell how impatient he's getting as he's trying every which way, showing that Mercedes that he's there, but he just can't do anything with it at the moment. Now, this is costing him dearly. As the Top Gun makes his way finally past the Mercedes of Prev, who is not giving this one up. I have to say, fair bit of racing from the pair of them, giving us a little bit of entertainment. However, Prev is still fighting him. But he's made a bit of contact, and Prev has gone round the outside. No, he's gone off, and he's gone off into the gravel. Penalty for corner car. It looks like he's reset onto there, so you're not allowed to do that. Are we forecasting rain? Yeah, rain has been forecast, and it's looking a little bit overcast at the moment. So this is... I wonder why John's gone onto the soft tyre then. This is going to cost him horribly. Smaller Smiley's dropped back, but crucially 10-10 has gained. Looks like medium tyres could be the best tyre to be on at the moment, especially if we get a wet race, offsetting that trade-off between performance and wear. 5/10 now is the gap between the lead. Just the top 7 are covered by 3.5 seconds. That just shows how competitive it is. Maybe think it'll come early. Yeah, I think you are definitely right. I mean, Top Gun won't have much to worry about in terms of going to the rain, going long until the rain comes down. However, those on the mediums might have a bit more of a challenge now. But however, the overcasting of the skies will just encourage them just to extend their life just that little bit extra. Then let's go on board with the champion-elect as it comes round these long right-hander corners. Crucially behind Wiggles and John stuck together like tape. One badly timed pit stop onto Indians and the top 7 will split. Absolutely they will. And hard to see what John's strategy was here, because he's really got to hope for a safety car and throw to another set. And just as I say that, the weather has already started to go bad. It's already raining, as you can see, as you saw previously through John's time. As you can see, Smaller Smiley's made a mistake, and that crucially is going to allow Deflated Wee potentially into 3rd place. No, he's not. So Smaller Smiley made a mountain of errors there, as the Haas potentially could find a way past the Alfa Romeo coming into the next corner. When will DRS be disabled though? What's Wiggles going to be able to do? Smaller Smiley trying to defend that position with everything he's got. And it looks like he's just about making it stick, the defense. He's going to have the inside coming into the next right-hand corners. However, Deflated's really not going to give that one up, and that's very wide there for Mr. Wiggles. These two pretty much line astern, but Deflated Wee just gets the drive that he needs. And lovely bit of racing there from the pair of them. But Smaller Smiley has to concede to Deflated Wee. Now this might help John a bit more now, because him being on softs, his tyres will be dead, but it just depends on how everybody else feels. Just how quick will the track dampen? Well driven, absolutely well spotted. So, crucially, this is going to be for the lead. In interchangeable conditions, the championship leader is potentially going for the lead here, with the Alpine has seen him coming. John goes into the pits already, so I imagine he'll be going onto the intermediate tyres. So let's see how he does coming into the pits. Well, the leaders are obviously separated by very little, and yeah, he's gone onto the intermediate tyres. That could be the earliest potential gamble. So let's see how well he does there, as the Mercedes of Wiggles now attempts to make his way past the Alfa Romeo. He's not going to give in though. He goes down. He holds up behind him there. Smaller Smiley loses a bit of track end, but Wiggles loses his rear end, it has to say. As you can see, the starting order is well and truly starting to fizzle out a little bit. Mistakes are starting to creep in, but crucially, Joseph Hales now pulled a second to 10-10, as Mr. Wiggles tries desperately to get ahead of the Alfa Romeo. As you see yellows in Sector 2, and that will be because Prev has had a moment. So you see John has gone on to the Inters. It doesn't look too bad, but the track, as you can see, there's definitely some water drops on his car. Looks like it's maybe dampening quite quickly. I wonder when we're going to see the leaders in. DRS has now been disabled, crucially, as Joseph Hales, as soon as DRS is disabled, he comes into the pits, as does Mr. Wiggles, and that could be the optimal time. I remember when I did the Miami race, it was a bit deceiving, however. That guy gets a 3-second penalty for time penalty for track limit breaches. 10-10 has obviously stayed out, so let's see what was the better strategy. D-Tom gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Yellows is sector 3. That'll be for Prev. As you can see, the track already starting to wetten. I think Joseph Hales has made the right decision here. But anyway, whoever's done the alternate strategy, it's certainly going to pay off. And as you can see, Joseph Hales makes short work of Darking. As Wiggles is ahead of John. And these two, crucially, are separated by not much. And Prev comes into the pit lane to retire, only separated by 0.2 of a second. It's going to be very, very close here for what's going to happen in the championship between them. However, I think the leaders have been compromised here. I think they've got to come in. Just look at the rain building up. You can see it on the screen. And straight away, 10-10 is in. Should be interesting to see where they come out in relation to Joseph Hales, who's coming round the final... He's coming round the penultimate corner, I should say, right now. Smaller Smiley actually stays out for another lap, which seems a little bit crazy, all things considered. Don't forget that 10-10 is in the Williams there. And there we see... It's just completed his pit stop, but what's Joseph Hales going to do? Where's he going to come out? It looks like he may stay ahead of the Williams, and yes, he does stay ahead of the Williams. So Joseph Hales keeps the lead by going on an alternate strategy. Deflated Wee, however, lines up in 4th. Mr. Wiggles stays in 5th. John not too far behind is 6th. So that was a saving grace, potentially, for John. If you look at the times between Joseph Hales and Smaller Smiley, only then will we really get a reference point as to whether Smaller Smiley staying out was the right decision. As you can see, it's starting to tumble down, so Smaller Smiley's going to lose out big time here. He's lost 0.7 of a second just in that part of the track alone. So, yeah, absolutely, he's got to come in. As you can see, it is way too wet to stay out there on slicks. Yep, so that's going to be it. So it's going to be a wet race up to the end. So Smaller Smiley has got to come in and box, so, but it will surely drop all the way back, I think, to about 8th place. So that strategy not paying off there for the Alfa Romeo at all. Joseph Hales still remains in the lead. We'll go on board with the Alfa Romeo and see what he does. Wiggles gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings for cutting the corners. So yeah, Smaller Smiley comfortably behind John and Wiggles. That guy is just coming up in the Williams. And just far behind, we've got Top Gun in the Alpha Tauri. And looks like the two are going to come out more or less side by side. But yeah, Smaller Smiley just ahead. What's Top Gun going to do? He's right behind him, but he can't do anything crazy. Deton gets the time penalty for track limit breaches. And now Smaller Smiley's got to get used to these tyres. And Top Gun, however, is used to those tyres already. So, as you can see, making short work of the Alfa Romeo as he goes down to the inside of Turn 5. And the Alpha Tauri versus the Alfa Romeo. He's got the inside line to the next corner. However, Smaller Smiley will have the inside for the right-handers. And just like that, he retakes 7th position. He's lost out massively, I have to say, by staying out those extra 2 laps. Spectators goes, the new commentator goes, and look at that from Top Gun. Throwing it down to the inside, you do not see overtaking there. The amount of grip that he's got in the wet, it's just been incredible so far. He's all over the back. Although we're going to stay with this battle for a little bit, because I think it's certainly worth keeping an eye on, because that overspeed that Top Gun had was just crazy. And nice sort of aerial shot there for us all to watch as Darkling and Flew go to war between them. Red versus blue. And Smaller Smiley's had a horrible exit. And that's going to give Top Gun potentially the outside of the first corner. Is he going to be able to make anything? Can he pull off and move around the outside? No, he can't, but he switches back. Brilliant move there from the Alpha Tauri as he goes up into 7th place. Smaller Smiley losing out yet again. But I have to say, given it was all in intermediate conditions, brilliant bit of driving there from the Alpha Tauri. Switcheroo indeed, and it was an absolute joy to behold. Now let's see what happens between Flew and Padge. These two are having a nice little scrap between them for the final point. Blue's got a little bit twitchy there, and that's going to give Padge an opportunity to go down the inside. Is he going to be able to make the move stick coming into the hairpin? The Alpine's going to stay around to the outside, but he gets the better drive coming out of the corner, and that should cover him for now. Going back up to the leader. So we have John's actually passed Mr. Wiggles now. So interestingly enough, it looks like it must have been a mistake from Wiggles to make that happen. However, it's good for the championship, because if this, just to remind you all, if this stays as it is right now, 10-10 will not only win the driver's standings, but it will be the constructors championship for Williams. Deflated Wee sits about 3/10 behind the championship leader. Everyone has to be so careful with this particular track. That particular corner, it is so easy to lose your car. As the top 5 separated now by 3 seconds. Obviously, most people will have their penalties. That guy nearly 10 seconds behind the slot. A smaller Smiley has dropped all the way out of the battle thanks to his mistake. As John throws it down to the inside, throws a look to Deflated Wee, just showing him that he's there. Wiggles sitting behind the slot, just taking it a little bit easy probably. But Joseph Hale's doing a brilliant job of managing everything up front. So that guy gets a time penalty, and I think Asperfrog has also got a time penalty as well. So let's ride on board with the McLaren and see if he's able to do anything against the Haas. Hales has left the session. So I think Joseph Hales is disconnected, so that could really slow him down in comparison to the championship leader. Deflated Wee doesn't sit too far behind him as well, as he tries to pull a gap between himself and John. The Alpine is obviously ghosted. Now, crucially, that could hand 10-10 the lead. Joseph stopped cooking. I think something's turned off the oven, to be honest, Novatech. Not that it was his fault, but connectivity is obviously a problem. And Joseph Hales, through that bad internet connection, has now lost the lead. As we see, Flew has made a mistake, as Deton as well has also made a mistake. So I don't know whether there was a coming together between these two, as Hales now falls down to 3rd, and John goes ahead of him now. The Alpine is losing up thanks to that poor internet connection. That is such a shame for Joseph Hales, who has been absolutely on point so far for this World Championship round. Rotten luck indeed, it has to be said. And now Wiggles has taken 4th place from Hales, who now sits in 5th. As well as that's such a shame. It's like having reliability problems in real life F1. Your internet just goes. Yellow's in Sector 2. That must be Deton. My thoughts exactly, Sun God. My thoughts exactly. It looks like the rain is picking up. So could we see these guys be going to full wets? As Top Gun comes into the pits, I imagine this is to go into full wet tyres. Let Joseph cook again, but given him the rain's intensified, I think it should be more like letting him drown. And yeah, Top Gun has pulled the trigger before anybody and has gone in onto wet compound tyres, with Padge the next one to come across the line. Looks like he won't get out ahead of Padge, but will get out in front of Greg, I think. And let's see what he does compared to the rest of the field. Now that he's pulled the trigger, interesting to see what the rest of the field do. We'll put on the times to the leaders just to see whether Top Gun actually gains relative to the pace setter of 10-10. Joseph will be cooking again. I think he'll certainly be fuming, but not much he can do on the cooking front when he's got barely any internet connection. Maybe his internet's cooked. Okay, so 42-1 so far. He's going to lose time a little bit thanks to Padge. But crucially, Padge has lost the rear end. And he has to back out. Deflated Wee and Mr. Wiggles both come into the pit. So they're the ones blinking early now to go onto the wet weather tyre. So who's got the fastest lap so far? So it looks like Joseph Hales is going to keep the fastest lap. Wets go on for Deflated. Wets have gone on for Wiggles. That guy's going to come and put on Wets, as will Smaller Smiley. Yellows in Sector 3 as Greg makes a mistake. And looks like Joseph Hales is back. That guy comes out in 7th with Darking. Losing the back end all over the place. As Padge comes into the pits now. Yep, 42.6. It looks more than wet enough now for wet tyres, it has to be said. It's got to be time for wets. You've got to be thinking about that if you're the leader. Well, you've got 3 leaders now. As you can see, Deflated Wee is gaining massively on Joseph Hales. They've got to come in. They've got to come in now. That guy gets another time penalty for breaching track limits. And no, they're staying out. Are they going to try and go to the end? I think if there's any shoes I want to be in at the moment, it's in the shoes of Deflated Wee and Wiggles. Good question. I don't know what I'm seeing either. Full wets are better. Yellows in Sector 3. I think that's Wiggles. Wiggles has gone round, and that could be crucial in terms of the championship here. CT, how are you doing? I don't know why they're still out either, to be honest. Yellows in Sector 3. I think that's Greg making another mistake. And John right behind 1010. Oh, and look at that. 1010 already struggling with pace coming out of that corner. Oh, and look at that. It's so careful. You cannot attack the track in any way as that guy passes Darking. Goes round, tries it round the outside. You gotta admit, you gotta love the bravery there. It has to be said. As he loses out to Top Gun, who finds himself now crawling into 6th place. Who's, funny enough, not too far behind Wiggles and Deflated. So he's brought himself right back into contention here. Yellows in Sector 3. What are the leaders going to do? They're staying out yet again. If they leave it too long, it's not going to get to the point where it's worth it. I completely agree, because Deflated Wee is gaining on a lot of them. I'd rather be sitting in that Haas right now than any other car. As they come through onto lap 21 of 23. 12 laps to go, and the gap between Deflated Wee and 1010 is 17 seconds. So it should be interesting to see how much time he gains on this lap. We'll keep it on leaders and times for now. If the rain gets thinner, the top 3 have smashed it. That's a good point. Deflated is catching like crazy. As Wiggles comes into the pits. And he retires. Wiggles has retired. So that's it for him in terms of the championship. All 1010 needs to do now is finish... Okay, so he's got to finish at least... If John wins, he's got to finish at least 2nd. With 58 points, he needs 78. So he needs 2nd to win the championship. But it's getting much closer at the front. As you can see, John and Wiggles nose to tail themselves. Deflated Wee has gained about 3 seconds on this lap alone. Yellows in Sector 1 as... Yep, as Wiggles is pulled over to retire. Deflated Wee is gaining like crazy. He's only 2 seconds now behind Joseph Hales. On this lap alone, he's gained about 4 seconds. So, a horror race for both the Mercedes. So yeah, Joseph Hales has lost out a lot to the top. So, give it a couple of laps and Deflated Wii will be all over them. So it all just depends. Like, if it does calm down, if the rain does calm down, the oven's still not working. I think that he's had a bit of a misfire in there or something. I'm not quite sure what the right terminology is. However, a right terminology to describe Deflated Wii at the moment is very, very quick, as he goes through to take 3rd place ahead of Joseph Hales, and now he's got a couple of laps of grinding to do before he can get to the back of John. The leader's trying an overly optimistic strategy, it has to be said, but I don't know what the weather's going to do. If it ends up going back to intermediate weather, they could be brilliant for this as John goes for the lead, but he's not quite got it in him to attempt to fully commit to the move. And as you can see, Deflated Wii only 9 seconds now behind the leaders. Good effort though, has to be said. Small Smiley gets the time penalty. We'll show the penalties on screen for you now. So we got 6 seconds for Deton, 9 for Asthma Frog, 3 for Padge, 3 for Small Smiley, and 9 for that guy. And just on this lap alone, despite having to overtake Joseph Hales, Deflated Wii has gained 5 seconds on the leaders, as I think that's Deton that's gone off in his Red Bull, so he's down to 13th, and he's more than a lap down at this point. So give it within lap 24, and we'll see the Haas all over the back of the leaders, who I have no idea what they're thinking in terms of the strategy. Yellows in sector 2 as Asthma Frog tries to recover his car, and he spins it yet again. Hard to recover this car at any point, let alone in the wet. Darkin gets a 3-second time penalty. If John finishes second at 10-10 thirds, 10-10 is still champion. Absolutely. So Wiggles is more or less out of the standings, so I think it's pretty comfortable to say that 10-10 will finish ahead of him. However, Deflated Wii is now 4.6 seconds behind the leader, and I dare say it'll probably be passed by at least by the end of lap 25. But if you look on the track, guys, the rain's starting to back off. Now this is where it works against Deflated Wii. It's going to take the rain a little bit of time to ease off. Asper Frog comes into the pit lane speed, so I imagine it'll be to retire the car. And he has retired the car. Gap is 3 seconds to the leaders, but we'll go on the onboard. It looks like the rain is just about starting to calm down. So for those who predicted that the rain would calm down, I think they just about got it right, because in a couple of laps time the wets just won't be feasible anymore. .2 seconds now, the gap between Deflated Wii and the leaders. Goes in a little deep there, it has to be said. He's going to have to move back into inters at some point, so he's got to make... Well, it sounds ironic when I say this, make hay while the sun shines. When I say make hay while the sun shines, I mean, you know, I guess... I'll say paddle when the crow flies. I don't know. I've completely given up with that analogy. As you can see, he's all over the back of the McLaren, and it won't be long until he's fully past him. We're going round the outside, and it's relatively easy pickings, but there's a little bit of contact there, and John has gone off as a result. Very controversial move there from Deflated Wii. It could have been just a racing incident. However, it could be something that the stewards may potentially look at. It was certainly ambitious as he loses the back end a little bit. Yellow's in sector 1 as John has lost out massively there, and that's going to... Well, 10-10 has had one hand on the championship. He may just put in a couple more fingers. 4/10 now, the gap between these two. Caught him while making a correction, look like. So, yeah, it could just be a racing incident there, unfortunately. Don't think there was any malice in anyone's part. As you can see, deflated wee. As you can see, it's all over the back of the Williams. It all just depends how quickly the track dries up. He's going to have to go back to Inters before the end of this race, I'm convinced. This has been a race of crazy strategies, as Deaton has another moment in his Red Bull. As Deflated Wee could go around to the inside again. Hopefully this is a little bit cleaner, and thankfully it is. Deflated Wee goes into the lead. Almost. But the Williams is still on the inside. He's not giving this one up. You drive as if he's got nothing left to lose. It's not like he's in the lead of the championship or anything. However, Deflated Wee makes the move stick now as he takes the lead of this Portuguese Grand Prix, which has been one of the craziest, it has to be said, in terms of changeable conditions. However, the gap between John and 10-10 now is now 9 seconds. Should be interesting to see if John makes any inroads towards Deflated Wee. It all just depends on how quick the track dries up. Now this is where, obviously, it goes into a bit more of a reversal situation, because Deaton has obviously gone off. Not that that's relevant to the championship battle. 9.3 now is the gap, so he's got about seven laps, including what's left of this one, to potentially make the win stick. However, 10-10's going to be right there with him, and he doesn't need to push, because as things stand at the moment, 10-10 will be the world champion. But as you can see, Deflated Wee is getting away from 10-10. He knows the changeover point is coming, so he's just got to drive flat out to make sure he builds up as much as a gap that he can. More or less equal times between himself and those on the leaders on the intermediates. But bearing in mind, the intermediate runners have done 8 laps extra wear. So interesting to see how he favours in the end of this. You see the McLaren, he's gained 4/10 on that last lap. He's got to pull out a little bit more if he wants second place. But it won't be long, I think, until 10-10 goes past eventually. As he goes very wide. And 10-10 gets the time penalty. That's going to help Deflated Wee, who wants to potentially win this Grand Prix. .7 now is the gap to the leader. So Darkin gets another time penalty. 8.6 seconds. You can tell that the track has definitely changed to a point where the intermediate is more or less the better tyre. So this has been such a hard race to call. I have to say, fair play to the top 3 for giving us a hell of a show, and commiserations to Joseph Hales as well, simply because of that issue disconnecting. Top Gun and Joseph Hales are now fighting for 4th and 5th between them. However, the changeover point has more or less happened, but that's not going to stop Top Gun from trying. Joseph Hales holds on to the position, but the AlphaTauri's got a brilliant drive, and he's staying with the Alpine all the way through. 7.8 seconds now, the gap between the leaders and John. So it just shows the intermediate now is the right tyre to be on. And just as I say that, the gap now between the leaders has diminished into only about 2/10 or so. And look at how he loses the rear end in that pass. It looks like Deflated Wee looks like he's going to overtake for the lead. He's got plenty of urgency, you can see on his steering wheel. Down to the inside he goes, and he overshoots the corner. It looks like he may have to give that position back, and I think he's just about doing so. A little bit of contact there between himself and Deflated. That's a little bit naughty, it has to be said. He loses the lead to Deflated Wee. I think it may just have been a consequence from him running off the track. However, this is all working out brilliantly for John, because the longer 10-10 takes to get past, that's just going to reel him closer and closer to his shot, potentially winning this Grand Prix. Because 10-10 still has that 3-second time penalty, and John has no penalties as of yet. 6 laps to go in this crazy race at Portugal. let's go for the interval gap now. 4.1 seconds the gap between the two. And John... Ah... 10-10 almost going to the back of Deflated Wee there. He's having to play this very, very cautiously. But as you remember, he would love to win this Grand Prix, but he certainly doesn't have to, as Joseph Hales gets a 3-second time penalty himself, and he stays out ahead of Top Gun as of now. The wets are certainly starting to give out. 10-10 getting so much drive compared to Hales. He goes round the outside in the penultimate corner. Is he going to make the move stick? Darking as gets a 5-second time penalty and retires his car. That means leaves Padge still in the points. And just like that, 10-10 moves comfortably back into the lead. And currently, as things stand right now, with 5 laps to go, including the one they're on right now, 10-10 will seal the World Championship. It all just depends if John can close up to him somewhat, because the gap between them currently stands at just over 3 seconds. Darking retires from the session, sadly, but it looks like those on the intermediate tyres, it's all paid off. Like, we thought they were a little bit mental when they came in. It looks like the strategy has paid off. But now, the problem for Deflated is I don't think he'll even be on the podium at this point. It all just depends on how much time Joseph Hales makes up. However, the McLaren rather, just drives straight past the Haas like he's not even there. And with 2.6 seconds to 10-10, it looks like John will win the Grand Prix. He's not going to get fastest lap. That will go to Joseph Hales. But with a 7-point difference, it will not be enough to keep him in the fight for the World Championship. It's safe to say that Deflated Wee is out of the running for second place. So the question is now, can he stay ahead of Joseph Hales? Can he build up enough time just to make sure he can stay on the podium? Darking obviously retires, and Deton comes into the pits to change onto intermediate tyres. It sounds like too little too late though, it has to be said. The gap between the leaders sits at 2.5 seconds. We're going to lap 30 of 33 with 4 laps to go until we could be potentially crowning our world champion for the no assist tier. And I have to say, this race has been, it's an absolute treat to watch. It's been so tough to call in terms of the weather, in terms of the strategy. I have to say, a brilliant show put on from all the top guys at the moment just to give us this unpredictable show, this unpredictable stream. If Wee gets no penalties, he'll get a podium. Absolutely. So Joseph Hales has got to go like the world depends on it if he wants a podium, even if it's fairly unlikely right now. 2.5 seconds the gap between John and 10-10. Seven wins so far this year, 10-10. John won the last round in Saudi Arabia, and he also won the first 2 rounds in Brazil and Azerbaijan. So these top drivers have been absolutely brilliant, and Deflated Wee has gotten himself a time penalty. So that's going to help. That's going to hinder him even more if he wants to stay on the podium, because he'll have to keep Joseph Hales behind him now. He's on intermediate tyres and it's gaining him about 2 seconds a lap. That is crucial for Deflated Wee. Not what he needs at all. It's lap 31, 3 laps to go before the end of this Grand Prix, and it has been well and truly one for the ages so far. Now, John, we all thought he was a little bit crazy for going out for starting the race on softs. Didn't have the best start, but it looks like he'll have the best finish after all penalties and everything have applied. He's just got to keep it steady and keep it within 3 seconds, and he'll have the win, absolutely. Joseph Hales now 3.5 seconds behind Deflated. He'll be on him at least by the last lap. Haas finding it very tricky on those full wet tyres now. That guy's got 12 seconds of penalties, but he'll crucially stay ahead of Small Smiley. Crucially, those intermediates have done 20 laps on John's car, and he's reeling in 10-10. Now, look how close Joseph Hales is getting to Deflated Wee. The gap now between them is less than 2 seconds. And in these smaller sections here, you can see just how much time Deflated Wee is losing. He's not even going to end up on the podium by the end of the next lap, surely. The gap now, it's not even a second now. He's losing out to the Haas. He's losing out to the Alpine, rather. Joseph Hales recovers from that disconnectivity issue, and it looks like the Alpine is going to end up on the podium. Deflated Wee defending very aggressively. Alpine goes round to outside and is barely even a contest, it has to be said. Now, crucially, Top Gun is obviously on the wet, so that seals Deflated Wee down in 4th place. So it looks like the wet tyre strategy just wasn't the right one today. Yellow's in Sector 1. Time penalty for Padge, but he's comfortably ahead of Deton. Well, certainly hurt him in his charge against Greg. We'll go on board with the leaders as they... I say that we'll go away. We'll go ahead to the leaders. And I don't think 1010's going to make up the gap that he needs to win this race. But it doesn't matter too much, just as long as he finishes in 2nd. If John wins, that will be the end of the championship. I have to say, what a season 1010 has had. And what a season everyone has put on for us in the no assist tier. And what a time to do it on what is our 200th race for IIRL. And we look to be crowning ourselves a world champion. Now, it couldn't have been any more timely, has to be said. Now, Deflated Wee has lost out to... He's losing out to Top Gun here. He's obviously must have made a mistake. Deflated Wee is not even going to end up in... He's not even going to end up in 4th. He's going to drop down to 5th. As that guy is 8 seconds behind, so I don't think he'll lose anything there. You can't pull 3 seconds in a lap. Top Gun is a very speedy driver. But it's going to be all about this man right now. With 7 wins and so much consistency going into this round. With that guy in the points as well, that will surely ensure the Constructors' World Championship for Williams. So it adds even more to what has been a very magic 200th race for IIRL. We are about to watch 1010 come across the line and become the world champion with 2 races to go. With that track penalty, it's not going to give him the race win, which would have been an even more apt way to seal off his championship glory. However, John will come across the line to take the crown, but with an unsaleable points advantage. 1010 comes across the line, and he is the world champion of the no assist tier for IIRL. He has done it more than enough to secure himself the world title with 2 races to go. And I have to say, what a season this man has had. He's done it. The hardest tier in this league. And he's now comes across the finishing line a world champion. Great recovery from John to win the race. Joseph Hales recovers brilliantly to 3rd. Top Gun comes to 4th from 15th, which is brilliant. Deflated Wee sadly couldn't do anything more with his wet tyres in 5th. That guy comes across the line in 6th and loses 7th to Smaller Smiley. Blue was next to come across the line, with Greg and Padge didn't cross the line on the lead lap, so they're stuck in 9th and 10th. However, Flu is the last of the Alpines to come across the line. So we'll just see if we can bring on the world champion for a bit of a moment to see if we can get him onto the chat. But I have to say, guys, what an absolutely brilliant race it was. Very unpredictable. And there we have it, guys. There we have it. So just like that, guys, we have both championships wrapped up in this absolutely magic stream. And I have to say, this has been truly It's been an absolute joy to commentate on. We've still got 2 more races of fun where everything is off. No rules are off the table. And I have to say, with 7 wins and so much brilliant consistency going into the season, we have a very worthy world champion in 1010. So there we have it, folks. We'll just wait until we can get 1010 on, if he's available. But we'll go through the race. Well, John wins for his 4th win of the season. So brilliant stuff with 1010 second and confirmed world champion. Hales recovers well to 3rd with Top Gun sitting well in 4th. Deflated Wee in 5th with Small and Smiley in 6th. That guy drops to 7th because of his penalties with Flu in 8th. Greg is in 9th and 10th is Padge, getting the last point for Alfa Romeo. Deton, Darking, Asperfrog, Wiggles and Preb all out of the points. But sadly, not quite their day, especially not for Mr. Wiggles. And Darking was having a solid debut up until this point.